7:54 in the morning. December 7th, 1941. Silence hangs over Pearl Harbor like a blanket, the kind of quiet that only exists on a Sunday morning when the world is still asleep. Sailors are rolling out of their bunks, rubbing the sleep from their eyes. Some are already at breakfast, complaining about the powdered eggs. Others are writing letters home, talking about Christmas leave that's just weeks away. On the deck of the USS Arizona, a color guard is preparing for the 8 o'clock flag raising. Just another routine Sunday in paradise. Battleship Row stretches out across the harbor like a steel monument to American naval power. 8 massive warships, the pride of the Pacific Fleet, lined up perfectly in their berths. The USS Oklahoma sits heavy in the water. The USS West Virginia gleams in the early morning light. And the Arizona, the crown jewel of them all, rests peacefully with 1,512 men aboard. None of them know they have 6 minutes left to live. But something's wrong. 3 warnings have already been missed this morning. 3 chances to sound the alarm. 3 opportunities to save thousands of lives, all ignored or dismissed. The radar operators saw them coming. The destroyer on patrol spotted enemy submarines. The signs were everywhere, screaming danger, but nobody was listening. What happens in the next 90 minutes will drag America into the biggest conflict in human history. It will transform a nation of isolationists into warriors. It will sink 8 battleships, destroy nearly 200 aircraft, and claim over 2,000 lives. But more than that, it will shatter the illusion of safety that an entire generation believed in. In 90 minutes, America would change forever. The story actually starts 11 days earlier, hundreds of miles away, in the frigid waters of northern Japan. November 26, 1941. A fleet of warships slips out of Tankin Bay under the cover of darkness. 6 aircraft carriers cutting through the North Pacific waves, their decks packed with fighters, bombers, and torpedo planes. This isn't just any naval force. This is the most powerful carrier strike group ever assembled, and it's heading straight for Hawaii. Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo stands on the bridge of the flagship Akagi, watching his fleet disappear into the fog. He's a cautious man, a destroyer commander suddenly put in charge of this audacious operation. The weight of it sits heavy on his shoulders. Radio silence is absolute. Not a single transmission. If they're detected, the entire plan collapses. For 11 days, they'll sail through some of the roughest seas on Earth, avoiding shipping lanes, hiding in storms, racing toward a target that has no idea they're coming. 3:42 in the morning, December 7th. The calm waters near the entrance to Pearl Harbor ripple slightly as something breaks the surface. The USS Condor, a small minesweeper on routine patrol, spots a periscope cutting through the darkness. Ensign R.C. McCloy grabs his binoculars, focuses on the strange shape moving against the current. That's not one of ours. He immediately radios the USS Ward, a destroyer on patrol nearby. Contact made, submarine sighting, first warning, but nothing happens. The message gets logged, discussed, debated. Maybe it was a buoy, maybe it was a shadow, maybe it was nothing at all. The military bureaucracy grinds slowly, even in the face of enemy contact. Minutes tick by. The submarine disappears. The Condor continues her patrol, and the first warning dies in a sea of doubt. Meanwhile, 230 miles north of Oahu, the Japanese carriers have reached their launch point. The sun hasn't risen yet, but the flight decks are already buzzing with controlled chaos. Ground crews are fueling aircraft, loading torpedoes, arming bombs. Pilots gather in ready rooms, going over maps one final time. They know the targets by heart now. Battleship Row, Ford Island, Hickam Field, Wheeler Field. The locations burned into their memory after weeks of preparation. At 6 in the morning, the mess halls on the Japanese carriers serve a special breakfast: rice, miso soup, and chestnuts. It's a traditional meal before battle, the kind served to samurai warriors centuries ago. Some pilots eat in silence. Others joke nervously, trying to lighten the mood. A few write final letters home, just in case. They tie on their hachimaki headbands, white cloth emblazoned with the rising sun. One pilot whispers a prayer. Another checks his pistol for the third time. The controversial part that most people don't talk about? Some of these young men fully expected to die that morning. The culture of sacrifice, of dying for the emperor, wasn't just propaganda. It was real, and in a few hours, some of them would make that sacrifice willingly. 6:10 in the morning. The order echoes across the carrier decks. Launch aircraft. The first plane roars down the flight deck of the Akagi, straining against the weight of its torpedo. The carrier pitches in the heavy swells, making the takeoff treacherous. One by one, they lift into the dark sky. Nakajima B-5N torpedo bombers, Aichi D-3A dive bombers, and Mitsubishi A-6M Zero fighters. 183 aircraft forming up in the pre-dawn darkness, circling above the carriers like birds of prey. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida climbs into his bomber, settling into the commander's seat. He's handpicked to lead this attack, the best of the best. As his plane lifts off, he looks down at the carriers below, their decks already preparing the second wave. Everything depends on the next 2 hours. He checks his watch. Right on schedule. The formation turns south, heading toward Oahu. The sky is starting to lighten on the horizon, painting streaks of orange and pink across the clouds. It would be beautiful if it weren't so deadly. Back at Pearl Harbor, 6:45 in the morning. The USS Ward is still on patrol near the harbor entrance, still looking for that submarine the Condor reported. Hours ago, Lieutenant William Outerbridge paces the bridge. It's his first day in command of the Ward, officially taking over just yesterday. He's eager, alert, maybe a bit too careful. When a PBY patrol plane signals another submarine contact, Outerbridge doesn't hesitate this time. There, a conning tower breaking the surface, following the supply ship Antares into the harbor. A midget submarine trying to sneak past the defenses. Outerbridge orders general quarters. The crew scrambles to battle stations. At 6:50, the Ward opens fire. The first shot misses. The second shot hits the submarine's conning tower dead center, punching through the thin metal. The submarine begins to sink. Outerbridge orders depth charges. 4 explosions rock the water, finishing the job. This is it. The first shots fired by America in World War II, and nobody knows it yet. The Ward immediately radios headquarters. Attacked submarine. Dropped depth charges. Sunk enemy contact. Second warning. But again, the message gets tangled in red tape. Is it real? Is it another false alarm? Should we wake the Admiral? The minutes drag on while officers debate and discuss. The warning sits on a desk, waiting for someone to take it seriously. By the time anyone acts on it, it'll be far too late. 6:53 in the morning. The Ward's message finally gets transmitted to higher command, but it needs to be decoded, verified, passed up the chain. Every second of delay brings the Japanese aircraft closer. 7:02 in the morning, 230 miles north of the Ward, 2 young Army privates are wrapping up their shift at the Opana Point radar station. Joseph Lockard and George Elliott have been staring at a green screen all night, watching for blips that never come. Their relief is late, so they keep the equipment running, practicing their radar operation skills. Then the screen lights up, a massive return, bigger than anything they've ever seen during training. Lockard leans forward, adjusting the settings. This can't be right. The blip represents more than 50 aircraft, possibly more than 100. It's 137 miles out and closing fast, heading directly for Oahu. Elliott grabs the phone, calling the information center at Fort Shafter. He's transferred to Lieutenant Kermit Tyler, the only officer on duty. Elliott's voice is urgent. We've got something big coming in. Really big. North, 137 miles out. Tyler barely looks up from his coffee. He knows a flight of B-17 bombers is expected from the mainland this morning. That's probably what the radar picked up. His response will echo through history as one of the most tragic mistakes ever made. Don't worry about it. Nothing to be concerned about. Elliot tries to explain. Sir, this is different. This is huge. But Tyler's already dismissed it. The call ends. Lockard and Elliot stare at the screen, watching the blip get closer. Something feels wrong, but they're just enlisted men. What are they supposed to do? Disobey and, Officer? They keep tracking the return, watching it approach, feeling the dread building in their stomachs. Third warning, ignored. 7:40 in the morning, the Japanese aircraft cross Oahu's north shore, dropping to low altitude. They fly over Halewa, over the sugarcane fields and pineapple plantations. The morning shift is just starting at the Dole plantation. Workers look up, hearing the drone of engines. Some wave. Must be Navy maneuvers. Happens all the time. The formation splits up, each group heading for its designated target. Fuchida's group aims straight for Battleship Row. Another heads for the airfields at Hickam and Wheeler. The fighter escorts break off to strafe anything that moves. They're over the target now, and there's no turning back. Fuchida looks down at Pearl Harbor spread out below him. The battleships are exactly where the intelligence reports said they'd be. Lined up perfectly, sitting ducks. Not a single fighter in the air to oppose them. No anti-aircraft fire, no alarm. Complete surprise. He opens his radio and transmits the code that will live in infamy. Torah, 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 Tiger, Tiger, Tiger. The signal means complete surprise achieved. Back on the carriers, Admiral Nagumo receives the message. He allows himself a slight smile. So far, everything is going exactly according to plan. 7:48 in the morning. The first bombs fall on Ford Island Naval Air Station, tearing through parked aircraft like paper. Explosions rip across the runway. Fuel tanks ignite, sending fireballs into the sky. Mechanics working on early morning maintenance dive for cover. Some don't make it. Rear Admiral Patrick Bellinger is in his office when the windows shatter. He runs outside, sees the red circles on the wings of the attacking aircraft. Japanese. Impossible. He sprints to the radio room. 7:53. The message goes out to every ship, every base, every command post in Hawaii. AIR raid Pearl Harbor. This is not drill. The words crackle through speakers across the harbor. For a split second, nobody moves. This has to be a mistake. Some kind of training exercise gone wrong. Then another explosion, and another. Men start running, some toward their battle stations, some just running, anywhere, nowhere, trying to escape the chaos. 7:55. The coordinated attack begins in earnest. Torpedo bombers scream across the harbor at 50 feet, so low their propellers almost touch the water. These aren't standard torpedoes. The Japanese modified them specifically for Pearl Harbor, adding wooden fins so they can operate in the shallow water. Each pilot has one shot, one chance. They don't waste it. The first torpedo slams into the USS Oklahoma, then another, then a third, all within seconds. The ship shudders, lists to port. Below deck, sailors are thrown across compartments. The lights go out. Water rushes in through gaping holes in the hull. Men scramble for hatches, for escape routes, but the ship is capsizing fast. 7:58. The Oklahoma rolls over completely, trapping more than 400 men inside. The massive hull settles upside down in the harbor mud. Inside, in the darkness, sailors pound on the metal, screaming for help. Some compartments have air pockets. Men huddle together, sharing the shrinking oxygen, praying someone will cut through the hull before it runs out. Outside, rescue crews can hear the pounding. They grab cutting torches, start working frantically. Every few minutes, they stop and listen. Tap twice if you can hear us. The tapping comes back. They cut faster, racing against time and tide. 8 o'clock, on the deck of the USS Arizona, the color guard stands ready to raise the flag. It's a daily ritual performed with precision and pride. The bugler raises his instrument, then the world explodes around them. Bombs rain down on Battleship Row like hail. The West Virginia takes a direct hit. Fire erupts from her deck. The California shudders as torpedoes tear into her hull. The Nevada, the Tennessee, the Maryland. One by one, America's mighty battleships are getting pounded into scrap metal. But the worst is yet to come. 8:06 in the morning. High above the harbor, a Japanese pilot lines up his approach on the USS Arizona. He's carrying a special weapon, an armor-piercing bomb modified from a 16-inch battleship shell. 1,760 pounds of explosives with a hardened tip designed to punch through the thickest armor ever made. He releases. The bomb falls, gathering speed, whistling through the air. It strikes near Turret 2, the forward gun turret. The bomb doesn't explode on impact. That's the genius of the design. It punches through the deck, then through the next deck, then through another, 4 levels deep before the fuse finally triggers, and it detonates right next to the forward ammunition magazine. 8:10. The USS Arizona explodes. 582 tons of gunpowder and ammunition detonating in less than 7 seconds. The ship literally lifts out of the water. A fireball erupts that can be seen from the mountains. The shock wave shatters windows miles away, knocks men off their feet on ships hundreds of yards distant. The sound is indescribable, not just heard, but felt, a physical force that slams into your chest and squeezes the air from your lungs. 1,177 men die almost instantly. Some are vaporized in the initial explosion, others are crushed by collapsing metal. The lucky ones never know what hit them. On the bridge, Rear Admiral Isaac Kidd and Captain Franklin Van Valkenburg are killed instantly, their bodies never recovered. They'll be awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously, small comfort to the families who'll never even have a grave to visit. The ship breaks apart. The forward section collapses into itself, the massive gun turrets crashing down through the weakened decks. The stern rises briefly, then settles back. Within minutes, the Arizona is resting. On the harbor bottom, her superstructure barely above water. But the nightmare isn't over. The fuel oil. Thousands of gallons of thick black bunker fuel pouring from ruptured tanks. It spreads across the water like a living thing, coating everything it touches. Then it catches fire. The entire harbor around the Arizona becomes an inferno. Men who survived the explosion now find themselves swimming through flames. The oil is 6 inches thick on the water, burning so hot it melts metal. Donald Stratton is on the Arizona when she explodes. The blast throws him across the deck, burns covering his body. He's trapped on the forward mast, flames closing in from all sides. 70 feet away, on the repair ship USS Vestal, a sailor named Joe George sees Stratton and 5 other men about to die. Without hesitation, George ties a rope to the Vestal, throws it across to the Arizona. It's barely thick enough to hold 1 man, let alone 6. Stratton wraps his burned hands around the rope. He can't feel the pain anymore, his nerves are too damaged. Hand over hand, he pulls himself across. Below him, the flames reach higher. If he falls, he's dead. He doesn't fall. All 6 men make it across. Stratton will spend a year in the hospital. He'll never fully recover from the burns. But he'll live another 75 years, one of the last survivors of the Arizona, telling his story so the world never forgets what happened that morning. 8:12. The Arizona settles completely. She's gone. America's most powerful battleship, destroyed in 6 minutes. The oil fire continues to burn. It will burn for 2 days straight. The heat is so intense it warps metal on nearby ships. And there's nothing anyone can do. The explosion severed the water mains running to Ford Island. There's no water pressure for the fire hoses. They can only watch as the Arizona burns. While Battleship Row burns, the airfields are getting destroyed. Wheeler Field takes the brunt of it. Japanese fighters strafe the runway, their machine guns tearing through the neatly parked American aircraft. 62 planes destroyed in the first 10 minutes. Pilots sprint from their barracks, still in pajamas, trying to reach their fighters. Most never make it. The aircraft are burning before they can even start the engines. Hickam Field is worse. The bombers there are lined up wingtip to wingtip, perfect targets. 188 aircraft destroyed on the ground. The barracks take direct hits. The mess hall where men were eating breakfast collapses, burying dozens alive. The hospital fills up so fast they start laying wounded in the hallways, in closets, anywhere they can find space. But not everyone is caught helpless. Second Lieutenants Kenneth Taylor and George Welch are at an all-night poker game when the attack begins. They race to their car, drive like maniacs to Haliwa Field, a small auxiliary airstrip the Japanese don't even know exists. Their P-40 fighters are already fueled and armed, ready for a training exercise that was scheduled for later. They don't wait for orders. They take off directly into the middle of the attack. 2 pilots, 2 fighters, against over 100 Japanese aircraft. The odds don't matter. Taylor spots a formation of dive bombers and dives straight at them. His guns open up, tracers arcing across the sky. One Japanese plane explodes, then another. Welch is right behind him, engaging a group of fighters. The Zeros are faster, more maneuverable, but the Americans have surprise on their side. Nobody expected any American fighters to get airborne. They land, rearm, and take off again. By the end of the morning, Taylor and Welch will shoot down 7 Japanese aircraft between them. Both will receive the Distinguished Service Cross. They're proof that even in the worst disaster, courage still matters. 8:17. At the harbor entrance, the USS Helm is trying to get out to open water. She's the only ship to make it out during the attack. As she passes through the channel, her lookouts spot a Japanese midget submarine trying to follow them in. The Helm opens fire, missing the submarine but driving it away. Every ship, every sailor, fighting back however they can. 8:25. Through the smoke and chaos, sailors on other ships see something incredible. The USS Nevada is moving. She's the only battleship that wasn't trapped when the attack started, and her crew is trying to make a run for it. Getting out to sea means getting away from the flames, getting room to fight back. Executive Officer Francis Thomas gives the order. Take her out. The Nevada surges forward, smoke pouring from her stacks. But as soon as she starts moving, she becomes the primary target. Every Japanese pilot in the sky sees her. If they can sink the Nevada in the channel, they'll block the entire harbor entrance. No ship will be able to get in or out for months. The dive bombers swarm her like wasps. 8:40. The Nevada is getting hammered. Bombs hit her deck, her bridge, her superstructure. She's on fire from bow to stern, listing heavily to port. Commander Thomas realizes the ship won't make it. If they keep going, they'll sink in the channel and trap the entire fleet. He makes the hardest decision of his life. He deliberately runs the Nevada aground near Hospital Point. Better to beach her than let her block the harbor. The Nevada settles into the mud, still burning but out of the channel. The crew will save their ship, but not today. Today, they just try to survive. On the burning Arizona, Lieutenant Commander Samuel Fuqua refuses to leave. As the senior surviving officer, he organizes rescue efforts, even as flames close in around him. He pulls wounded sailors from the oil-covered water, dragging them to safety. He directs firefighting efforts, even though there's no water. He stays at his post for hours, coordinating the evacuation, making sure every man who can be saved is saved. He'll receive the Medal of Honor. He'll say later that he was just doing his job. On the USS West Virginia, a cook named Doris Miller has no battle station. As a black sailor in 1941, he's not allowed to man the guns. That's for white sailors only. But when the attack starts, Miller doesn't care about regulations. He carries wounded men to safety, including the ship's captain who's dying from his injuries. Then Miller finds an unmanned anti-aircraft gun. He's never been trained on it, Never even touched one before. He figures it out. He starts shooting, and he keeps shooting until he runs out of ammunition. Witnesses say Miller shot down at least 2 Japanese planes, possibly more. The Navy Cross he receives will make him the first African American to earn that honor. The citation doesn't mention his race. It doesn't need to. His courage speaks for itself. 8:54. Just when it seems like the attack might be ending, the second wave arrives. 171 aircraft, mostly dive bombers and high-altitude bombers. The harbor is already shrouded in thick black smoke from the burning ships. It's harder to see targets now, harder to coordinate attacks. But the Japanese pilots press on. The dry docks become the new focus. The USS Pennsylvania sits in dry dock number 1, surrounded by scaffolding and support ships. She's the flagship of the Pacific Fleet, a prime target. Bombs rain down around her. The destroyers Cassin and Downs, sharing the dry dock with the Pennsylvania, take direct hits. Their fuel tanks explode, the ships collapsing onto their sides like dying animals. 9 o'clock. The dry docks are burning. The Pennsylvania takes damage, but survives. The same can't be said for the destroyers. They're total losses, twisted wreckage that will eventually be scrapped for parts. 9:30. The USS Shaw is in a floating dry dock, her forward section torn apart from earlier bomb hits. The fires have been raging for 45 minutes. Damage control teams abandon ship, knowing what's coming. The flames reach the forward magazine. The Shaw explodes in a massive fireball that rises hundreds of feet into the air. A photographer catches the moment, the iconic image that will appear in newspapers around the world. The explosion is so spectacular, so catastrophic, that people assume the Shaw is finished. They're wrong. The forward section is gone, blown completely off. But the aft section survives. Incredibly, the Shaw will be salvaged, fitted with a temporary bow, and sail to the West Coast for full repairs. She'll return to service and fight through the entire war. But nobody knows that yet. Right now, she's just another ship dying in the flames. 9:45. The second wave begins withdrawing. Fuel is running low. The targets are obscured by smoke. Some aircraft are damaged, struggling to stay airborne. The pilots form up, heading back north to the carriers. A few want to stay, to finish the job. There are targets left, the fuel storage tanks, the submarine base. The repair facilities. One more strike could paralyze Pearl Harbor for years. But Admiral Nagumo says no, it's too risky. They achieved surprise once, they won't get it twice. American fighters are in the air now. Anti-aircraft fire is getting organized. They got lucky. Don't push it. The carriers turn north, heading for home. It's a decision that will haunt Japanese strategic planning for the rest of the war. That caution, that unwillingness to take one more risk, leaves Pearl Harbor damaged but not destroyed. 10 o'clock. The last Japanese plane disappears over the horizon. 90 minutes. That's how long the attack lasted. 90 minutes that felt like a lifetime to the men who survived it. The harbor is a scene of utter devastation. Smoke rises from a dozen ships, thick black columns that can be seen from every part of Oahu. The water is covered in oil, debris, and bodies. So many bodies. The casualty count is staggering. 2,403 Americans dead, 1,178 wounded, 21 ships sunk or damaged. All 8 battleships on Battleship Row hit, 5 sunk, 3 damaged. The backbone of the Pacific Fleet, broken in less than 2 hours. The hospitals are overwhelmed. Tripler Army Medical Center runs out of beds in the first hour. Nurses work without stopping, covered in blood, moving from patient to patient, doing triage with tears streaming down their faces. Who can be saved? Who's beyond help? The decisions are impossible, but they have to be made. Wounded keep coming, trucks and cars and anything with wheels pressed into service as ambulances. At Hickam Field, the morgue is overflowing. They start laying bodies outside, rows and rows of them covered with sheets. Men walk through with clipboards, checking identification tags, trying to figure out who's who. Some bodies are so badly burned they're unidentifiable. They'll be listed as unknown, buried in mass graves, their families left to wonder and hope and grieve without closure. The survivors are in shock. Some sit on the ground, staring at nothing, their minds unable to process what they just experienced. Others work frantically, still trying to put out fires, still trying to save ships that are clearly doomed. Nobody wants to stop. Stopping means accepting what happened, accepting that they failed to see it coming. Admiral Husband Kimmel, Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, stands at his office window watching his command burn. He's already composing his resignation in his head. He knows what's coming. The investigations, the blame, the courts-martial. A spent bullet from a Japanese plane crashes through the window, hits him in the chest. It doesn't penetrate his uniform, just leaves a bruise. Kimmel picks up the bullet, looks at it. Later, he'll say it would have been merciful had it killed him. He'll spend the rest of his life defending his decisions that morning, arguing that he did everything he could with the information he had. The rescue efforts continue through the day and into the night. On the overturned hull of the Oklahoma, cutting crews work around the clock. They can still hear tapping from inside. Men are alive in there, trapped in air pockets, waiting in the darkness. The rescuers cut through 3 inches of steel with torches and pneumatic tools. Every few hours, they free another group of survivors. 32 men are pulled alive from the Oklahoma. 400 weren't so lucky. The Arizona is still burning. The flames have died down, but the metal is so hot you can't get close. The oil slick continues to spread, a rainbow sheen covering hundreds of yards of water. Salvage crews know the truth that nobody wants to say out loud. Most of the men entombed in the Arizona will never be recovered. The ship is their grave. It always will be. As the scale of the disaster becomes clear, one fact stands out. It could have been worse. Much worse. The Japanese achieved a tactical victory, no question. But they made critical mistakes that will cost them the war. The biggest mistake? The American aircraft carriers weren't there. All 3 of them were at sea. The USS Enterprise was only 200 miles away, returning from Wake Island with a load of Marine fighters. If the attack had come one day earlier, or if Enterprise had been on schedule instead of delayed by weather, she would have been in port. The USS Lexington was delivering aircraft to Midway. The USS Saratoga was in San Diego, undergoing repairs. Not one carrier touched. Not one carrier even spotted. The Japanese knew where the battleships would be. They planned the entire attack around sinking those battleships. But 1941 naval doctrine is still built around the big guns. Carriers are seen as support vessels, scouts, auxiliary forces. Nobody fully understands yet that carriers are about to become the dominant weapon of naval warfare. The Japanese will figure it out at Midway, 6 months too late. But on December 7th, missing the carriers seems like a minor inconvenience. The second massive oversight? The fuel tank farms. Pearl Harbor stores 4.5 million barrels of fuel oil, sitting in massive tanks just inland from the harbor. If those tanks had been destroyed, the Pacific Fleet would be paralyzed. Ships can't operate without fuel. Every drop used in the Pacific Theater has to come from the mainland, a journey of thousands of miles. Destroying that fuel reserve would set back American operations by 2 years minimum, possibly longer. The tanks sit untouched. Not a single bomb falls near them. The Japanese pilots don't even target them. The entire reserve survives, ready to fuel the counterattack that's already being planned. Third failure, the submarine base and repair facilities remain operational. The dry docks, the machine shops, the skilled workers who know how to fix ships. All still there. This turns out to be crucial. Within days, salvage operations begin. Teams of divers and engineers swarm the damaged, ships assessing what can be saved. The West Virginia, the California, the Nevada, the Tennessee, the Maryland, the Pennsylvania. All eventually raised, repaired, and returned to service. Some will fight at the Battle of Surigao Strait in 1944, getting their revenge on the Japanese fleet. Only 3 ships are total losses. The Arizona, 2 damaged to salvage. The Oklahoma, which capsizes and is later scrapped. And the obsolete battleship USS Utah, used as a target ship and not considered worth the effort to raise. 8 battleships hit. 5 eventually returned to the fight. That's not the knockout blow Japan needed. The final strategic failure? Nagumo's decision to not launch a third wave. His pilots beg him. The targets are identified: the fuel tanks, the dry docks, the submarine pens. One more strike and Pearl Harbor is finished, but Nagumo refuses. The element of surprise is gone. American fighters are airborne. The risk is too high. He turns the carriers north and heads for home, celebrating a victory that's more limited than anyone realizes. These mistakes, these missed opportunities, will haunt Japan for the entire war. Admiral Yamamoto understands this immediately. When he receives the full damage report, he doesn't celebrate. He worries. They woke the giant, but they didn't cripple it, and now it's going to come for them with everything it has. December 8, 1941. President Franklin Roosevelt stands before a joint session of Congress. His voice is steady, measured, filled with controlled fury. Yesterday, December 7, 1941, a date which will live in infamy, the United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. The speech lasts 6 minutes. It's one of the most famous addresses in American history. Roosevelt asks Congress to declare war on Japan. The vote is nearly unanimous, 420 to 1. The single dissenting vote comes from Representative Jeanette Rankin of Montana, a pacifist who also voted against entry into World War I. She's shouted down, condemned, her political career effectively over. But she stands by her principles even as the nation unites for war. America transforms overnight. The isolationism that defined the 1930s dies in Pearl Harbor's flames. Recruiting stations are mobbed. Men line up for blocks, desperate to enlist. Some lie about their age. Some hide medical conditions. Everyone wants revenge. Over the next 4 years, 16 million Americans will serve in uniform. An entire generation will go to war. The sleeping giant that Yamamoto supposedly warned about awakens with a vengeance. Whether he actually said those words is disputed. Some historians think it's apocryphal, a quote invented after the fact. But true or not, it captures the reality. America was content to stay out of the war. Pearl Harbor changed that. The attack that was supposed to intimidate America into submission instead galvanizes it into action. The industrial capacity of the United States, the largest economy in the world, shifts into wartime production. Factories that made cars start making tanks. Shipyards that built cruise liners start launching aircraft carriers. By 1943, America is building a new Essex-class carrier every month. By 1945, the United States Navy is larger than all other navies in the world combined. Japan attacked a nation of 130 million people with the resources of an entire continent at their disposal. The outcome was inevitable once America decided to fight. The legacy of Pearl Harbor stretches far beyond the war itself. In 1962, the USS Arizona Memorial is dedicated, built directly over the sunken battleship. It's designed by Alfred Price, an Austrian-American architect who was actually detained after Pearl Harbor due to his nationality. The irony isn't lost on anyone. The memorial's white structure spans the width of the ship, sagging in the middle and rising at both ends to represent initial defeat and ultimate victory. 1.8 million people visit the memorial every year. They stand in silence, looking down at the rusted remains visible beneath the clear water. Oil still leaks from the Arizona's fuel tanks, droplets rising to the surface. 9 quarts a day, every day, for over 80 years. People call them the tears of the Arizona. The ship is still crying for the men entombed within her. The last survivors are passing now. As of 2024, fewer than 75 are still alive. Men in their late 90s and beyond, the final witnesses to a day that changed everything. Jack Holder, Lou Conter, Bob Fernandez. They tell their stories at schools, at memorial events, at veterans gatherings. They want people to remember, not just the attack, but the lesson. The lesson is about complacency, about missed warnings, about the danger of not taking threats seriously. 3 chances to sound the alarm that morning. 3 warnings ignored or dismissed. The Condor's submarine sighting. The Ward's attack on the midget sub. The radar contact showing a massive formation approaching. Each time, someone made the decision that it wasn't serious, it wasn't urgent, it could wait. Each time, that decision cost lives. Pearl Harbor leads directly to the creation of the CIA, to the complete overhaul of American intelligence services. Never again would warnings be dismissed so easily. Never again would bureaucracy stand between a threat and action. The intelligence failures of December 7th echo through American military doctrine to this day. But beyond the strategic lessons, beyond the intelligence reforms, Pearl Harbor represents something deeper. It's about the 1,177 men still entombed in the Arizona. It's about the 400 men trapped in the Oklahoma as the water rose around them. It's about Doris Miller manning a gun he wasn't allowed to train on because of the color of his skin. It's about Kenneth Taylor and George Welch taking off into impossible odds because someone had to fight back. It's about Joe George throwing a rope to Donald Stratton because leaving men to burn wasn't an option. These stories matter because they show what people are capable of when everything falls apart. Some ran toward the danger. Some stayed at their posts, even as the ships sank beneath them. Some pulled wounded from burning water until their own hands were too burned to continue. Some made impossible decisions about who could be saved and who couldn't. And some, trapped in darkness with the water rising, spent their final moments tapping on metal, hoping someone would hear them. Remember, Pearl Harbor becomes the battle cry of the Pacific Campaign. It's painted on bombs dropped on Tokyo. It's shouted by Marines storming beaches across the Pacific. It's whispered by sailors on the decks of carriers bearing down on the Japanese fleet at Midway. The attack that was supposed to break American resolve instead forges it into something unbreakable. The road from Pearl Harbor to Tokyo Bay is long and bloody. 4 years of island-hopping campaigns, 4 years of carrier battles and amphibious assaults, 4 years of young men dying on beaches with names like Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Iwo Jima, Okinawa. The cost is staggering. But America never wavers. Pearl Harbor made it personal. When the Japanese surrender is signed on the deck of the USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay on September 2, 1945, Admiral Chester Nimitz makes sure to include survivors from Pearl Harbor in the ceremony. They earned that moment. They watched the Pacific Fleet burn. Now they watch the rising sun flag come down in defeat. The circle is complete. The Arizona remains where she fell. The Navy declares her still in commission, a ship that will never be decommissioned. Every morning, a color guard raises the American flag over the memorial. It flies from a pole attached to the ship's severed mainmast. The men below decks are still on duty. They always will be. When the last Pearl Harbor survivor passes away, when there's nobody left who remembers the sound of the bombs or the heat of the flames or the screams of the wounded, the Arizona will still be there. Still bleeding oil into the harbor, still reminding us of the cost of unpreparedness, still honoring the sacrifice of men who died before they could fight back. December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. 90 minutes that killed over 2,000 Americans and launched a war that would claim millions more. 90 minutes that transformed a nation. 90 minutes that showed both the worst of human aggression and the best of human courage. The attack was perfectly executed. The planning was brilliant. The surprise was complete. But Japan miscalculated the one thing that mattered most. They thought they were striking a knockout blow. Instead, they created a nation of warriors determined to avenge every life lost in that harbor. The final irony? The attack that was meant to keep America out of the war, guaranteed American entry. The strategy designed to intimidate, instead, infuriated. And the empire that struck first would be the empire that surrendered unconditionally, its cities in ruins, its military defeated, its ambitions crushed. Remember Pearl Harbor. Not just as a military defeat or an intelligence failure. Remember it as a testament to the men who served, the men who died, and the men who survived to tell the story. Remember it as proof that even in our darkest moments, courage and sacrifice still matter. Remember it as a warning that freedom isn't free, that peace isn't guaranteed, and that vigilance is the price we pay for security. The tears of the Arizona still rise to the surface every day. Each drop a reminder, each drop a memorial, each drop a promise that we will never forget the men who rest beneath those waves, and we will never forget the lessons learned on that Sunday morning when the world changed forever. That's Pearl Harbor, minute by minute, second by second, a story of failure and heroism, of death and survival, of defeat and ultimate victory. The day America went to war, not because it wanted to, but because it had no choice. The day that proved that even from the ashes of disaster, something stronger can rise. The day we learned that the cost of freedom is measured in the lives of those willing to defend it. And every day at the memorial, visitors stand in silence and look down at the rusted hull beneath the water. They see the names of the dead carved in marble. They smell the faint scent of oil still leaking from the ship. They imagine what it must have been like to be there that morning, to see the planes coming, to feel the explosions, to make the choice between duty and survival. Most of the men on the Arizona never had that choice. The explosion happened too fast. One moment, they were preparing for a routine Sunday morning. The next moment, nothing. But their sacrifice wasn't meaningless. It woke a nation. It unified a people. It changed the course of history. Remember Pearl Harbor. Always